Hey guys, it's Kristen at Crafty Cat Doc. I am coming on today to show you these two Better Homes and Gardens binder cookbook junk journals that I've made. So about 7 years ago now, I posted a video of one very similar to this, and I said I was working on another one. Well, I finally finished it, and in the meantime, I had found a second one. So I did both of them. They're very similar. Some differences, but very similar. So I'm going to go through those and get those posted on Etsy. By the time you guys see this video, they will be up. So if you're interested, you can take a look. Maybe a long video. There's quite a bit going on, so I will get started. So this one again is just like the one, if you've seen that video, is by far my most watched video. It's pretty much identical. It has this vintage tablecloth on the spine because the spine was kind of yucky. I had some Tim Holtz utensils that I put on the front. And so I had done this cover at the same time that I did that journal and just never got around to finishing it. So I had a newborn at the time and it was just a lot. So no excuses since then, really. I just wasn't inspired to do it until now. So I do not have the inside pages for this one. I did not do anything to the inside of the cover. This was taped there and I just left it. You can see it's got wear and tear. It's been wiped down, so there's no surface dirt, but it has dirt from use, stains from use, and I just left it. I don't remember the years, late 50s, early 60s on both of them, I think. I did use dividers from the second one throughout because I don't know what I did with the dividers from the first one. That was a long time ago. So we'll get started. So on the dividers, I have the back of them had the weird pictures that I don't like from these cookbooks, so I covered them with pages that I liked. I made fabric pockets. The fabric has a stabilizer on the back, and so it's a little bit sturdier than just a piece of fabric. I stitched on a handwritten recipe card, and then we've got a root beer label. We've got a picture of a vintage kitchen there. Those are tucked in here. Lots of stuff tucked into pockets. Everything is original ephemera. There are no digitals in here, and I'll try to go through it. So this is a catalog from the 60s or 70s. I don't remember the name of the catalog, but it has some nice images there and prices. Let's see, the price isn't on that one. Interesting to look at prices. So that's tucked in there. We've got one of the McCall's recipe cards there. I made some tags, so I made a master board of cut out recipes from cookbooks and some from just recipe boxes that I had, and made a master board and then cut it up. I backed it with vintage ledger. I'd left most of these just plain. I put some sellotape on there, but just plain for you guys to kind of customize. And then this is a little McCormick fold out how to use the spices, so it's pretty long. This one is for the chicken based stock, so it has chicken seasoned stock base rather, and it's got recipes in there. This is an authentic Libby's corn and peas ad. I think this is from the Saturday Evening Post. I had a lot of vintage magazines that I cut all the ads out, so I don't know for sure. On the inside of this flap here, I have put some, this is Tim Holtz Distress Ink stained paper or dyed paper. I think this was duck egg. Put a little bit of fabric up there. On this one, I used a children's book image to make this little pocket here. This back card is Tim Holtz paper. I have used some embossed paper and just some torn notebook paper there to kind of layer that pocket. Inside, we have a market list. That's a Rifle Paper Company. That is not vintage. This is a page from a little pamphlet, cookbook pamphlet, and it's backed with some. This is stamp album paper, so you can journal on that. And then another picture from a vintage catalog, and it's backed with ledger paper. And that just, so this front part is a pocket and the back part is a pocket. And then you can attach something here. You can just leave it as a flip, whatever you want to do. Here we have some stock tickets from a railroad ledger. Here we have a piece of avocado dyed paper that's just a flip, and I have glued on just another little recipe from a book. Just has a little tag there. Some vintage ledger paper with fabric tab. I pulled out, I kind of curated a collection of fabric for these journals that I liked. A lot of 30s reproduction fabrics. None of the fabrics are vintage, but they all have that vintage feel. And I tried to use a lot of fabrics in these. So there's a little whisk charm on that. All the charms are on little ball pins. You can easily remove them if you don't like them. Here's a page from a little golden book. I think this is the We Help Mommy book with Eloise Wilkin illustrations. Here is a little divider from another recipe binder. And on this, I have put some embossed paper with a little children's book image. So here's some little cashier checks, like coat checks, or I don't know what they're for. But there's a couple of them there, and that's a pocket. And then inside this side pocket, we have a soda label. We have a page from a stamp book, a King Corn stamp book, and then a folded Campbell's soup ad from an early, like 1920s Woman's Home Journal. I do remember what that one's from. And then this is just the pocket. It is not attached at the top. Some vintage notebook paper with fabric at the top. This is a page from the Uppercase Magazine Feed Sack book. This is a page from a little golden book that has been glued on to just some it's actually album paper, but stamp album paper, but it's plain on the back. I've put this ad here for pineapple juice. At the bottom, I've made a pocket out of a dairy label, and inside that we have, again, this is the master board I made. I've got some embossed paper and another picture from the catalog, just as a decoration on the front with a milk cap, and then there's a ledger on the back, and that slips into that pocket. And then there's a side loading pocket here with just an image from a magazine and a fabric ruffle with a little fabric covered button, and that's just got brown paper on the back, and that slips right in there. Some more vintage notebook paper with fabric at the top. Again, this is another piece of the Tim Holtz Tim Holtz Distress Ink dyed paper. There's a page from a Cutco cookbook. Here we have a flip down Daisy air freshener ad. And that's just scrapbook paper. On the back of that, we've got a belly band made from an image from a maybe it was Popular Mechanics series of home improvement books or furniture building books that had a lot of cool images. So I tried to include all kitchen related images or eating related images. So just made a belly band out of that by layering it with some embossed paper and vintage ledger. Put a little fabric tab there. Inside here we have a vintage Coke ad. Yeah, I'm not sure which magazine. Oh, 1952, September 1952. Not sure the magazine. Family Circle, it says it right there. So that's cool. That's the only Coke ad that I found in my stash. So the other one will not have a Coke ad. There's a grapefruit soda label and some receipts from a market in Baltimore, Maryland. That's what I was looking for, and those just tuck in there. There's another divider. On the back of this one, we have another fabric pocket with a little handwritten recipe pocket here. Inside that, these are two not vintage, but just little notebook pages that look like guest checks, and then a new old stock brownie root beer label. Here is another page from that catalog about utensils, and it's just backed with plain paper, so that can be a journaling card. We've got a pink guest check in there. We've got some vintage guest checks. There's several of them here. And then a little page from an Arm & Hammer pamphlet as well. Tuck those back in. Some vintage ledger with a flip out. Lots of vintage ledger in here. I have a lot, and I tried to pull a page from most of my books to put in here. Another page from the Eloise Wilkins Little Golden Book. On the back of that, we have a top tuck with little kids playing or eating or having a tea party or something. This is Tim Holtz cardstock with a little fabric tab there. And this one we have a flower ad. We have another McCall's recipe card, a handwritten recipe card, and then a like an advertisement recipe card from Urbox. And those just slip in there. There's another page from the Feed Sack book. Here's a piece of really pretty stationery, vintage stationery, vintage ledger. We've got a little teacup charm on this one. Another piece of avocado dyed paper. Another piece of the vintage notebook paper with a fabric tab. This is a divider from like a 45 record box. It was a little too wide, so this is a fabric ruffle. I folded it over. I put this vintage merchandise tag on it and made a tiny little pocket there. There is an old advertisement card for coffee. Here's a picture from a vintage reader, and it's just backed with paper, and then a ginger ale label. Lots and lots of ephemera in these. A Cutco cookbook page, vintage ledger with a fabric tab, a page from a magazine. These magazine images are almost all from the British country living vintage or modern rustic magazines. The paper in those is amazing. There is a fabric tab at the top, and then I put a little pocket on the bottom with Tim Holtz cardstock. We've got a page from Quality Stamps little book. There is a piece of vintage wallpaper backed with some craft paper, and then just a little handwritten double chocolate pudding recipe. On this we have a top corner tuck with the Country Mouse, City Mouse images from Richard Scarry, a milk cat bottle, some embossed trim. This is some blue ledger. I have a page of that later on. Here is another page from it's actually an ad for the knives, and it's just backed with coffee dyed paper. Another McCall's label, a Tupperware recipe card, and then a Campbell's soup ad. Turn that back upside down, slip those back in there. On the back of that is a page from a childcraft book. And there's a little glassine envelope of some extra of the recipes that I had cut up for the master board. I had some left, so I just threw them in. Here is a fabric tab I made some fabric covered buttons with some of the fabrics to go in. Here is a lemonade ad, a Sunkissed lemonade ad that flips up. This opens up, and we have a double pocket here. So here's a vintage, or not vintage, little golden book, Richard Scarry illustration with some embossed postcard, a little tiny piece of teacup fabric. Inside the front pocket we have another advertisement card for a syrup, and then a current vintage current recipe card. Those are just tucked in this front pocket if I can get that one in there. And then in the back pocket we have another page from the catalog with some more kitchen things. There is a journaling card from a kid's dictionary. It's just got plain paper on the back, and then another just kind of blank masterboard tag for you guys. Those will be great to put pictures on and journal on the back or whatever. Just leave some creativity for you guys. And then on the back of this one we have another pocket. Again, that's just all scrapbook paper. There's a piece of folded stationery, an airmail envelope that doesn't really fit with the kitchen theme so much, but I just like it, so I threw it in there. Guest check, and then an invoice from a fruit and produce company from 1930. Those are tucked in there. There's the blue ledger paper. Here we have a piece of coffee dyed paper. I have these envelopes that had the limes and the oranges, so I just put one in there. Inside here we've got a little baby doily, an index card divider from a recipe box, and a handwritten recipe. Here is another kind of collaged pocket. So fabric, some stamp books, some vintage ledger, and this is a paper coaster. So the paper coaster is a pocket, and I just put another one of those merchandise tags there. We've got another one of these from the pamphlet with paper on the back to journal on. We've got a Rifle Paper Co. Not vintage notebook page. Here's a vintage small ledger page. We've got another invoice from Bluefield Grocery Company, 1929. We've got another advertisement recipe card and another vintage current recipe card. And those all tuck in here. And then And then on the back of this is another page from the We Help Mommy. Vintage notebook paper with a fabric tab, vintage ledger paper with a fabric tab, and a little teapot or creamer pot. Another page from the Feed Sacks book, another divider. No pocket on the back of this one. I just like this blue kitchen. It's one of the few pictures I like from those books. A piece of Braille paper with another one of the, it's fabric stamps. This is actually a pocket in here. I don't have anything in it, from an index card divider. Another paper coaster with this little, again from a children's dictionary. That's slid in there. Another market list, another vintage ledger notepad, and another current recipe card. And that's just a little slip pocket. This is a page from a kid's cookbook. This is a piece of stationery. I just made a little corner on the bottom with fabric. A little wheat looking flower up at the top. Ledger with fabric tab. This is just a piece of scrapbook paper. Didn't do anything to that. Tea-dyed paper. Cutco cookbook paper. Here's a piece of vintage ledger with a Richard Scarry children's book image with a milk cap on it. We've got a page from a smaller, better, maybe this is Betty Crocker. Yeah, Betty Crocker recipe book. Another invoice. This one's from a fruit and veggie company from 1930. There's a doily in there, and then a handwritten recipe. So these books are stuffed, but there's lots of ephemera to take out. The great thing about binders is you can also take out pages. So here is another picture of the vintage kitchen with a little fabric tab, Tim Holtz paper, ledger paper, milk cap, another one of the masterboard tags, and another word from the dictionary, and those are backed onto paper so they're sturdy and good for writing. And then this is an envelope out of another recipe binder. You can see the holes were a little different, so there's a couple extra holes. I didn't put anything in there. Here's another picture from the Eloise Wilkins book, ledger, vintage ledger with a fabric tab on top. Here is another fold out with an ad for Brillo pads. And on the back of this one, we have another top tuck with a vintage reader image. I love the green in this one. Again, some embossed trim, some ledger paper, and milk cap. Here's another page from the catalog. You can get this whole set, a lifetime set, for $32. That's amazing. And some more in the back. We've got another stamp book page with some stamps on it. This is just a newer, just blank recipe card. Just thought those were fun to add in. Here's a piece of small ledger. I love the numbers up the side of this one. And then we've got another divider with a pocket on the back. Again, I love the blue on this image. The strawberry fabric with a handwritten recipe card. Another one of those that's backed. And then these two little, I love this, these notepads that I have. Again, not kitchen related, but I love them. And then another vintage current recipe card. This is just a little flip that I put a little collage on with another image from the Popular Mechanics series, fabric tab, and some embossed paper. If you can't tell, I've really gotten into using embossed paper. I blame that on Heather from Rose Hill Paper Cottage. She uses a ton, and her journals are beautiful. If you've not watched her channel, you should check it out, Rose Hill Paper Cottage. She does fantastic work. Another feed set paper, vintage ledger paper with a fabric tab, another of the dividers from the smaller binder with a fabric ruffle, vintage ledger with a fabric tab and a fabric covered button, another page from the kids cookbook, vintage ledger. I had an extra paper coaster that I had pulled out for each journal and didn't end up using, so I just paper clipped it in. Here's another fold out with an ad pocket with an ad. Tim Holtz ledger paper, Tim Holtz cardstock, embossed paper, fabric tab, another one of those recipe cards, and then I made a little journal card out of the master board with a picture layered with some vintage ledger. Those just tuck in there. I love this plate paper as well. And then on the back of this one, another Richard Scarry image. with fabric at the bottom. We've got an ad backed with some of that Tim Holtz Distress ink paper, and then another page from the catalog. Some gimmicky kitchen gadgets that probably still work today. And this pocket's pretty tight. So most of the top loading pockets, stuff's not going to fall out of them. I'm always worried about that before I started making them, but they work really well. Vintage ledger with a fabric tab. We've got a side pocket here with card stuff or stationery. Goodness gracious, scrapbook paper, stamps, and a recipe card. I've got some lace at the top, and this is just an SOS ad, and it just tucks in there. It does go in far enough. There we go. On the back, I folded that over. That's also a little tuck spot. I don't have anything in there. Recipe book page. This is another page from the British Country Living, Vintage Living magazine. It's a lot. Backed with vintage ledger. This is a scrapbook page made into a top-loading pocket with, again, a magazine image backed with some vintage ledger, and that just slides in there. And then on the back of this, we've got a belly band image of Beatrix Potter mice. I love mice. With a vintage corn label that's folded over, another McCall's recipe card, another little ad, and then another page from the Betty Crocker cookbook. And then clipped into the back, there's a couple things. So a popcorn box, a vintage decal. I didn't want to put these in the journals anywhere. Oh, it goes like this. In the journals anywhere, but I did include it for you guys to use if you wanted. It's one of the water ones, and it's in a cool little envelope, so you can use that as well. And then these are just scraps I had left over from making the journal. I have too many scraps. I didn't want to throw them in my scrap box. I figured you guys might be able to use them. If not, do what you want with them. And that is all clipped to the top. So that is, I did not count the pages. There's a lot. So that's this one. And look at this one. So the spine on this one's in really good shape, so I didn't do anything with it. I did take some vintage sheets and just made a strip and tied it into a bow. That's more to cover the inside. The binder on the inside it looks grimy. It's not dirty. I wiped it, but that's just to kind of cover it, and it doesn't interfere with turning the pages. If you don't like it, you can just untie and it slips right out. So this one, again, early 60s, I think. Let me get in the frame here. Very similar, just some different ephemera, and pockets look a little different. So again, binder with the pocket. This one's not a pocket on the front. It's got a milk cap. Inside this one, we have a recipe, crush label, the little pages from the notebook, a masterboard tag, and a McCall's recipe card. And then we have vintage paper. This is a stationery. I only had one of these, so the other one didn't get it, but it's a cute little apple stationery sheet. Magazine page. Ledger paper with a fabric tab. Avocado dyed paper with a little recipe tab. The railroad company stock tickets. Here is a Welch's grape juice ad from the Ladies Home Journal from the early 20s, I think. I did lengthen this one a little bit. On the back of this one, there's another Richard Scarry image. This one's a belly band. It's got some embossed paper, milk cap. Got a magazine page. One of those pamphlet pages, a drink label, and the King Corn stamp book page. Let's put that around those. Stick that back in. Vintage ledger with a fold out. Another divider. This one is this beautiful blue These people wrote a recipe on the divider tab, which is awesome. There's the MasterCard little journaling card that I made. These pictures, all the pictures that are in photo corners do come out. Ledger on the back. This one's got a little new old stock root beer label. Again, all the ephemera is authentic. I tell you it's not vintage, like these are not vintage. But no digitals. McCall's recipe card. I'm losing my words. Pink guest check and a handwritten recipe card. I do like to use digitals. I just had enough in these that I did not have to, so I just wanted to point that out. Vintage ledger with a little ladle charm. A pocket here. Again, the little red hen image. This is what looks like a handwritten. I had a cookbook that I had just had a few pages from that they looked handwritten. It's just backing that with some embossed paper. That's all layered up, and so in this front pocket we have a vintage kitchen, and we have another advertisement card for a grocery thing. So those go in the front, and then in the back we have the catalog paper, more pots and pans. We have a journaling card of the utensils. We have a journaling card from the Golden Book Dictionary, and then the vintage, a little handful of the vintage guest checks there. Slide in there. On the back is the Childcraft page. In this pocket, again, the layered fabric pocket with stamps. This is a pocket as well. And the paper coaster is a pocket, so dictionary word, root beer label, this is an ad for Does washing or laundry detergent. Not really kitchen, but I like the colors. There's some meat on the back, so that's interesting. And then a ledger paper, and this one's on braille paper. A small piece of braille paper, vintage ledger with a fabric tab and a fabric button charm. From the Uppercase Magazine feed sack book, the wheat-ish looking. That may look nothing like wheat, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. Stationery with a little fabric corner. Vintage notebook paper with a fabric tab. Distress ink dyed paper with a recipe tab. Cookbook paper. Divider from the smaller binder cookbook. Again, same pocket as the other one. I had two of these images with a dairy milk cap, embossed paper, radish word slips in there. In this pocket we have the picture from the reader, a divider from a recipe box, and the vintage current recipe card. Vintage paper with a fabric tab, Eloise Wilkins book. We've got another pocket on the back here with the paper coaster, the fabric, the stamp, sellotape, vintage ledger, the little merchandise tab, another catalog page, pressure cookers. We have an invoice from 1930, dairy, poultry, hog feeds, and flour. And then an advertisement recipe card. Slip in there. Again, we've got a vintage glassine envelope with the extra recipes, vintage ledger with fabric tab, magazine page image with a top loading pocket. This may be also from a Childcraft book with a fabric tab. Just put a little recipe behind it in scrapbook paper. Another stamp album page. Just a craft recipe card, a Dole ad, and a vintage current recipe card. In there's the small ledger. It's a scrapbook paper with a tab here, vintage wallpaper, the Betty Crocker recipe book page, and the airmail envelope. These airmail envelopes are the kind that they just fold out. They would write the letter on and fold it up and mail it. Stuff back in there. Here we have an ad for SOS again. I love the colors in some of these ads. Open this one up and we have a top tuck pocket with a vintage reader image, some fabric, Tim Holtz cardstock, Stamp album page. We've got an ad for an egg beater, McCall's recipe card, handwritten recipe, and ledger paper. Here's the vintage, super cute stationery page. Another divider from the smaller album with a fabric ruffle, bead sacks book page, vintage ledger with fabric tab, avocado dyed paper. Let's just flip the other way. Vintage ledger with a little fabric tab and a teacup charm. These little teacup and these charms are ceramic. They're a tiny little tea set. I bought them for the Alice in Wonderland journals that I made, and I have a lot left, so I thought they were cute with this. Again, a layered pocket Richard Scarry image. In this front part, we have a current recipe card and a handwritten recipe card. They slip in this front pocket. And then in the back, we have an ad for Pillsbury pie crust mix. We've got an ad for Tetley tea bags that has been backed with the blue paper and the vintage corn label. And those go in the back pocket. And on the other side of this is a page from the I Can Fly little golden book. There's the extra paper coaster on the Cutco paper pad. This is the record divider with fabric tab and a fabric covered button. Again, we've got the little hog merchandise tag, stationery paper that's folded over from Hallmark, vintage current recipe card, guest check, and then these receipt papers from the market in Maryland. They say 1940, so another divider with the fabric pocket, recipe card. This one had Scotch tape on it. I just left it there. These again are not vintage. They just look like little guest checks. We've got another page from the catalog with coffee pots and Toastmaster. We've got the craft recipe card. These two are not vintage. Rifle Paper Co. to-do list and a large masterboard tag. Let's go in the fabric pocket. Eloise Wilkins little golden book. Vintage ledger with fabric tab. This is the envelope. Inside this one I've got the masterboard journaling card with an image from the catalog, embossed paper, milk cap, and backed with ledger paper. And that just flips open. I put fabric on the part that had the gummed spot so it wouldn't stick. Bead sacks paper. Here's another one of the Richard Scarry pockets. You can see I have multiples of the same book because I was able to use the same images. It's got some vintage ledger, Betty Crocker page, another invoice from 1930. 300 lemons was $6. Interesting. And then a Sunkist ad. I did have to fold the bigger ads to get them in. And then on this side we have a Green Giant Peas ad that just flips open. Vintage ledger with fabric tab. Richard Scarry. I forget what the name of this book was, but this flips open. It is a Royal Gelatin ad, again with the dairy label, a coffee advertisement card that I actually backed. The image on the back of this one, I don't remember what it was, but it was horrible, so I backed it. And then a handwritten recipe for pecan cookies. And here we have the magazine image with the fabric ruffle and fabric covered button, and that's just backed with vintage ledger. Slides right in there. I love this view with that ruffle. I love that match fabric. Cutco recipe page, vintage notebook page, vintage ledger. This one was in like a flip book, so it's right side up here, but the back is upside down. I didn't put it in wrong. It was wrong either way I put it in. So a little layered pocket with scrapbook paper, stamps, stamp album, recipe card, lace, McCall's recipe card, doily, pamphlet page backed for journaling. Again, that is folded over and that is a tuck. I just don't have anything in it. Kids cookbook. Another ad here for Fire King ovenware, and that flips open, just scrapbook paper. On the back of this one is a pocket. We have another invoice, vintage invoice here from 1930 for coffee. We've got another masterboard tag, and then the cover of the Arm & Hammer little recipe book. So those tuck in there. It's another feed sacks page, vintage ledger with a fabric tab and a little sugar pot, tea-dyed paper, another divider. I love this fabric too. And a little fabric pocket with the little cashier checks there. We've got a pink guest check, a page from the Arm & Hammer book, a page, image from a reader, and then a cornstarch ad from the Really Old Ladies Home Journals. Those tuck in there. Vintage notebook paper, vintage ledger that's flipped over, children's cookbook. I don't remember what book that was from. Cutco cookbook, vintage ledger with a fabric tab. Here is the envelope. This pocket again has a dad putting his kid in the refrigerator with a fabric tab, Tim Holtz cardstock, milk cap, a Tupperware, recipe card, and a little pie definition. And that's that vintage envelope, nothing in there. Vintage ledger with a fabric tab. There's the blue. And then this is the pocket, top loading pocket with the magazine image, backed with vintage ledger. And then on the back of this one, we have a top loading pocket, Richard Scarry image with another catalog paper for cutting devices and toaster ovens. And then the McCormick Flakes recipe card book thing. Let's get those back in there. And then again, in the back of this one, we have the same popcorn box. We have the same decal and the little, it's envelope. And then we have the package of scraps with the fabric topper. There's also one large piece. It's white on the other side, embossed paper. I just embossed a lot of papers and I included one. So that is those two books. I hope you guys like them. I actually like them a lot better than the first ones I did, which hopefully would make sense since I've, in my opinion, gotten a little bit better at journal making. So I will get these up. I hope you guys enjoy them. If you have any questions, let me know. I didn't put a lot in the description on Etsy. I never do when I make a video. I think it's just better to watch the video. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. So thank you to any of you who were in my Whatnot show last Sunday. I'm going to do another one either next Sunday or the last Saturday of the month. I'm not sure yet, but I will put a link to my Whatnot show in the description. If you don't know what that is, it's an online auction where you bid in real time. The auctions are 15 to 20 seconds. And I have a lot of junk journal stuff that I'm just destashing because I have way too much. So I sold a lot last Sunday. I still have a ton left to sell. So if you're interested, come have a look. And again, I'll put that link in the description. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for watching. And I have a couple more journals I'm hoping to get made soon. So I'll see you next time. Thanks.